These are assembly instructions to my golf themed baby card. These two panels form my card base, and I'm just folding down on the score lines for both panels. So the first one has a center score line and a tab on the side, and the second one has just that center score line. So eventually I'm going to be joining my two panels at this tab, but I'm going to decorate my panels separately and then join them once they're decorated. So I'm starting with the section of the card that has the baby blocks. So I have my base panel that has all the cuts and scores in it. I'm going to start by folding on that center score line that runs the height of my panel. So on the left hand side I have a thin strip, and then I have two cutouts, and I'm folding this score line into a mountain fold, which will cause the score lines on either edge to become a valley fold. And then I've got another thin strip, and I'm doing the same thing with a thicker strip that's next to it. I'm creating a mountain fold on the top, and then valley fold on either side of it. I'm doing the same thing for the third one. And the fourth. So now when I fold my card, I have the thin strips on the outside of my card and then the thicker ones on the inside, so it creates like a column. I have 8 little squares to decorate my panel. My 8 little squares are cut out of brown craft board. And then I've got the letters. I'm using some linerless transfer tape, and I'm carefully applying my vinyl to my little squares. I'm doing my best to center my letters on my craft board base, and I'm going to continue doing that for all 8 of my squares. So now that my little squares are decorated, I am going to glue them onto my card base. So I'm starting from the top. I'm putting glue on the underside of each square. I'm doing my best to center them within the score lines and the cut lines of each one of these 8 panels. This card was specifically designed for a boy, but you could certainly replace the letters to read girl or baby. So I've glued down my letters on my card base. So next I have some pattern cardstock to embellish the card base. I'm putting glue on the underside of both pieces and gluing them to their respective sides. I have a little tiny trim piece at the top and at the bottom. And then I have my little diaper shirts. So I've used some 80-pound cardstock in white. I have my little print and cut with little images on them. I'm just gluing each one of them to their white offset. Should be an even border all the way around. And then I'm just gluing them down to my card base on either side of my baby blocks. So then I'm taking my card base and I'm folding up my panel with the blocks on it. So I'm putting glue all over one side, including those tiny little strips between my blocks. I have my tab on the right, and then I'm gluing in the section that's on my left. I'm positioning the folds of those tiny sections right up against the score line, and I want the same amount on the top and the bottom. There's a very tiny border. I'm just folding that into place. And then I'm opening my card and putting glue on the underside of the other half of it. And then I'm closing my card again. So I'm using my bone folder to spread the glue. So that's the first half of the interior of my card done. So next I'm going to decorate the second half of my card. So I have my card base and I'm gluing down some pattern cardstock on the left and the right hand side. And then I'm going to assemble my little crib. I've already folded down on the 4 score lines for my crib piece. I'm looking at the interior of my crib piece, and I have my tab on the left hand side, and then I have 4 rectangles to decorate inside. I'm starting with the shorter one. I'm putting glue on my crib piece, and then I want the bottom of my rectangular piece to be flush with the indentation on the bottom of my crib. I'm doing the same thing with the longer piece on the next section of my crib, just gluing it down at the top of that notch and between the score lines. If you've used pattern paper here, you certainly want the pattern paper facing out, because this is the part that you're going to see when you open the card. And I'm gluing down another short piece, and then I'm putting glue on that tab that's on the left hand side from the score line to the edge, and then I'm bringing the other side of my crib over, and I want the cut edge of it to be right along the score line of the tab where I've just put glue. And and the top and the bottom should be nice and even. So next I'm going to glue in my last red panel. I'm putting glue along the bottom just as I did for the others, and then I'm slipping my piece inside and just gluing it in place. So this piece should be able to fold flat in both directions. So I'm building my nursery, and this is the wainscoting for the walls of my nursery. So I have a thinner strip at the top and a larger strip at the bottom. So I'm putting glue on the underside of the piece with all the cutouts in it, and I'm gluing it down to my solid piece, making sure that the edges line up. I'm going to do that with the other one as well. And then I'm putting glue on the underside of my wainscoting, just gluing it down. It should land on the edges and the bottom of my pattern cardstock, with the large trim on the bottom and the small trim at the top. And next I'm just assembling the rest of the embellishments. I've got a mirror, and my mirror is cut out of holographic foil cardstock, and it's on an 80-pound cardstock base in brown. And I have the matching brown for my chest of drawers, and I'm putting glue on the underside of these rectangles, and I'm gluing them down so there's score lines on my chest of drawers to guide me. My drawer pieces should fit within those score lines. So I'm just gluing all 3 of them down. And then I have a long shelf and a short shelf. This long rectangle, which is a trim piece for the top of my longer shelf. So I'm just matching up the top edge and both sides and gluing that in place. And I have the same thing for the smaller one as well. And then I have my lamp. So I have the base for my lamp, and then I have the lamp shade. I've drawn some lines on the lamp shade with my scoring tool as a little extra detail. So I'm just gluing my lamp shade down to the base. I have my little golfing bear. I have a backing for it that's the same size, so I want the edges to match up. And then I have my elephant, have a backing for it as well. My bear and my elephant are print and cut, done on 65-pound shimmer paper, as is my little golf cart. So I'm putting glue on the underside of it, and I'm gluing it to its base as well. For my sun piece, I have a little circle that goes in the center of the smaller sun piece, like so. Then I'm putting glue on the underside of it and gluing it down. So then I have my book pieces, and this is my base piece for my books, and I have the different colored books, and I'm just gluing them in place. So next I have this long narrow strip, and I have folded down on the score lines for it. There are 3 of them, and I'm holding it so that the longest segment is on my left and the shorter segment is on the right. My first score line is a valley fold. My second one is a mountain fold, and my third one is going to be another valley fold, so it kind of looks like a lopsided W. So I have 2 clouds to glue down on each segment, so I'm just going to glue them down pretty much as you see here. Now that it's all assembled, I'm going to glue it all in. So I'm starting with my crib piece. I'm putting glue all over the longer side of my crib piece, and then I'm positioning it so that it's right up against the score line. So I'm lifting up the left-hand side of my card, so the corner of the crib is right along the score line of my card, and the bottom is right along the bottom of the wainscoting, like so. And then I'm going to fold my crib down so that it's flat on the right hand side, and I'm putting glue all over the smaller end of my crib right until the score line. So just covering that whole part, trying not to get glue anywhere else on the card. And then I'm closing my card, and I'm holding it shut until my glue takes. So now that my crib is in, I can start decorating the rest of my card. So on the left hand side, I'm going to add my little chest of drawers. I want the bottom of it to be right against the bottom of my green edge. And then I'm gluing down my lamp, and I'm gluing down my mirror. Actually, I kind of want it centered, so I'm just going to lift up my lamp and slide it underneath like so. I'm adding my little bookshelf right here, and then I'm just gluing down my books. And then I have my other shelf, my larger shelf. I'm going to put a little bit lower than the other one, and I'm just going to place my stuffed animals on their shelf. Then I have my little toy golf cart, and then I'm going to take my crown molding piece. I've got the long side on my left and the short side on my right, and I am flattening my piece. So the wonky side of the W is on my left hand side, and then I'm putting glue all along that longer side, and I'm positioning the edge of that longer side about 1/2 inch from the top of my card and right up against the edge of my pattern cardstock. And then I'm flattening my piece, and I'm putting glue just along that shorter end, and then keeping that flat, I'm going to close my card. And then I have my sunshine that's going to hang. I'm going to put glue on the tab that's above it, and then I am going to position it so it's more or less in the middle between those two clouds. And then I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to snip off the excess at the top. So next I have some adhesive backed rhinestones, and I'm just going to use them for the handles on my chest of drawers. So now that I've decorated the inside, I'm going to join my two panels. I'm putting glue all over that side tab, and I'm positioning the edge of my card right along the score line of that tab, and the top and the bottom should be nice and even. So next I'm working on the cover of the card, and I have my print and cut base panel. I have a piece of Cricut acetate, and it has a protective liner on both sides. So I'm just removing the liner. I've cut out the outline of the word baby in textured metallic vinyl. I've placed it so that that blue line is the center of my acetate panel, and I'm just applying my vinyl to my acetate. So I've got my cardstock frame with the detail in the interior, and then I have a frame that's cut out of foil cardstock. I'm putting glue on the underside of it, and then I'm just gluing it on top of the blue frame piece. I'm trying to get those edges to match up, and then I'm flipping my frame piece over, and I have some red line tape, and I'm covering the perimeter of my frame piece with red line tape, and then I'm removing the liner from my red line tape. I'm taking a piece of parchment paper, and then I'm taking my panel with the textured metallic vinyl. I'm flipping it over as well, so I've got the underside of both pieces, and I'm just positioning my acetate. There's a tiny little border around the top and both sides. And then I'm going to remove my parchment paper and glue the rest of that panel down. And then I'm putting red line tape around the perimeter again, exactly as I did for the first layer. So my acetate is sandwiched between red line tape. And then I have some frame pieces. Now I've cut these out of 110-pound cardstock because I wanted something a little thicker, a little sturdier. I'm covering one of them in glue and then just stacking the next one on top of it, making sure that those edges are nicely lined up. And then I'm covering one side of my stack in glue and adding another piece, and then doing that again one more time. And then I'm removing the liner from the red line tape on my acetate piece. Probably eyeball this, but I don't want to take any chances. And I'm positioning it so that it's just on the edge of my frame piece. And then I'm covering that frame piece in glue. And then I'm taking my print and cut panel and gluing it to that frame. And then I'm putting glue on the underside of the whole thing and gluing it to my pattern cardstock piece. And then I'm just going to glue this to the front of my card. So this card is going to be passed around in an office environment for many people to sign. So I've created a little booklet for signatures and well wishes. I'm just folding down on the score lines for all of my white panels. So these are the pages of the booklet. So I've covered my booklet and I've already folded down on the score lines for it. I'm stacking my 3 pages on top of one another and folding over and then inserting my pages into my booklet. I have some embroidery floss and I'm cutting a length of about 20 inches. I'm threading a tapestry needle. I'm putting my needle through all 4 layers of the card on the second hole from the left, and then bringing my needle up on the first hole on the left hand side. So I want to leave a little bit of a tail here. Putting my needle through that hole again, bringing it through the next hole that's on my right hand side, and then bringing it through the last hole on my right hand side. And then from underneath, I'm bringing it through the second hole from the right again. I'm doing a single knot, and I'm using my reverse tweezers, and I am tying a bow. And then I'm cutting off the excess, and then I'm making a little envelope for my booklet. I'm folding down on all the score lines for it. So this is the interior of my envelope. I'm bringing the right hand side in and putting glue just at the curved part at the end, and then I'm doing that on the left hand side, and then I'm bringing this over and gluing it down, and then I'm putting glue all along the edge of the flap that's at the bottom of my envelope, and I'm bringing that up and gluing that down. And so I'm inserting my little booklet into its envelope. I'm using some Velcro dots. They measure 3/8 of an inch and they are clear. I'm adhering 1/2 to the point of my envelope, and I'm sticking down the other half of the Velcro on top, and then peeling back the liner, and then closing my envelope. And then I'm using my Cricut tool, going between the 2 layers of Velcro, and then applying a little bit of pressure on both layers to make sure that they stay put. And so then I'm going to decorate the outside of my card. I've got both halves on either side, and I'm just laying them flat like so, and I'm just going to glue these two panels down. I use digital paper for my print and cut panels for everything except the cover of the card, including these panels, and I purchased them as a bundle on Etsy. And then I have my back panel. I'm gluing that down as well. And then I'm going to use more Velcro dots to attach my envelope to the back of my card. That way it's easy to open the envelope, give it to everyone to sign, and then put it at the back of the card without damaging the card in any way. And so that is my golf themed baby card.